this video, we're going to look at how to access Rstudio on your computer and how to create R scripts. So in order to access Rstudio on your computer, you can click down here. Now, of course, if you're on a Mac, this will look slightly different. And if we scroll down to your programs, you'll notice that you will have both an R and an Rstudio. If you don't see both of these, this means that you missed one of the installation pieces. So in the notes for this assignment, you'll see there are two different links, one for R and one for Rstudio. You'll want to make sure that you have followed both of those links and downloaded both of these. Now, R is the software that's going to perform the actual things that we do with data, and Rstudio is a nice interface that we can work with. So typically what we're going to do is we're going to click on Rstudio for all of the work that we do, but just know in the background of Rstudio, R is actually running, and so that's why we need to have both of these on our computer. So to open Rstudio, you can just click on the icon, and you should see something that looks like this. Now, the very first time that you start R, you probably have a white screen instead of a black screen. I like having a darker background. I find it easier on my eyes. So the very first thing I'm going to show you how to do is to change that if you want to. This isn't something you have to do, but a lot of people prefer the darker background. So to change your background color, you can click on Tools. You're going to go down to Global Options. And then within Global Options, you'll notice there's an Appearance option. And so within these, there are lots and lots of different color schemes. The color scheme that you choose is not going to change any of the functionality. This is purely just a visual thing. Different people like different color schemes. The one that I use is called Chaos. You can use whichever one you want, and then just click OK. Alright, so to start out here, let's just talk about some of the different windows that you see here in Rstudio, and we'll kind of talk about what they do to get started. So this first one you have over here, this is what is called the console. And now the console is where you can type in different pieces of code and it will produce whatever the outcome is. So for example, I could type in 2 plus 2, hit enter, and it will tell me that is equal to 4. And I could do lots of other things. So any code that I could run, I can run it directly in the console. Over here to the right, this is what we call the environment window. What we're going to do in R as we run code is we're going to create what are called objects. And so objects essentially store things. And so just for an example, I could type the word example in the console, and I could set example to be equal to, and so you notice here I'm using a left pointing arrow, 2 plus 2. And notice now we have a thing called example, and that thing is equal to 4. And we're going to go a little bit more about how to assign objects here in just a moment. This bottom window here, this window is really useful. It does a couple different things. One of the things that it does is it serves as a file navigator, and you can navigate through different files on your computer, and I'll show you how to do that here in a bit. This is also where different plots that you create will pop up, help information will pop up in this bottom window, so lots of different things happen here. Now, one thing to notice is these are just like any other window you've seen on your computer. We can move them, we can make them smaller or bigger, and this will be useful depending on what it is that we're doing. Maybe we want to have some windows bigger than other ones. You can also minimize them, make them larger, and so you've got some flexibility in terms of what these look like. Now, there's a fourth window that we're going to want to use often, and this fourth window is where we're going to see things that are called scripts, or later on notebooks. And essentially what these are files that we can open within Rstudio. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create a brand new script. And so to do this, there's a couple different ways. We could click on File, New File, Rscript, or see here, this looks like a little piece of paper. It's got a plus sign. That is also a new file option, and we're going to click on Rscript. Now, what this does is this opens up a brand new blank file, and again, this type of file is what is called an Rscript. Essentially, what this is you can almost think of this as like a Word doc, where what you're going to do in this file is store all of the code that you write. And you might want to say, well, why would I want to do that? Because you just showed me we could write code down here in the console. Well, writing code in the console is useful if you're only writing 1 or 2 lines or you're just double checking things, but usually when we're analyzing data, we have a lot of code that we need to write, and we know that we're going to run that code more than one time, so we want to have a place where we can save that code and we could run it later on. And so that's what scripts allow us to do. They essentially allow us to save all of our code in a file, and then each time we start a new Rstudio session, we can just open up that file and run that code anytime that we need to. And so what we can do is, once this is open, what I could do is I could start out my script, and let's say that for whatever reason I wanted to assign example equal to 2 plus 2, and I was going to need this line of code many times, and I didn't have to write in the console each time. So what I could do is I could type that here in my script. I could go to File, then I could go to Save As, so just like you would with a Word document. I would need to navigate to where on my computer I would like to save this particular file. You'll notice this is actually here for one of my classes. Let me navigate off of that. Let's see, here is the folder for this particular course, and we're in the week 1 notes, and so maybe I want to save this as example script. So I have saved that here on my computer. So now what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to close down Rstudio. I'm done working for the day. I could click close. Everything is saved. Now, when you go to close Rstudio at the end of the day, it's always going to ask you, do you want to save your workspace? You are almost always going to say, do not save to this. The reason for this is if you don't do that, you can save a bunch of old work that might interfere with new work that you're doing. So I almost always recommend to click don't save. So Rstudio is closed out. Now let's say I want to go, it's the next day, and I want to do some work. What I can do is, again, I'm going to open up Rstudio, and Rstudio does a couple nice things for me. One, I didn't actually close that script, and so Rstudio just automatically keeps that file open for me. And so it's there, and I can keep on working. But notice, since I closed down Rstudio, example is no longer in my environment or in my console. And so this is why having the scripts is really handy. Now all I have to do is move my cursor to that line of code, click on Run, and it will automatically populate that into the console and run that piece of code. And so this is, again, why scripts are useful. We typically don't write a lot of code in the console. Most of the code that we're going to write is going to be in these R scripts. All right, so now that you've seen just kind of an example of an R script, we're actually going to open up one that already has some code in it, and this is what you're going to want to turn in for this assignment. Now, to open up an R script that has already been written, and there's one on Canvas for you to download and put on your computer, what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, Open File, and again, you'll want to navigate to where on your computer you have that particular file you're looking for. So I'm going to navigate to the folder that I have for this class. Go UK classes. All right, we're in the week 1 notes, and we're looking at the applied exercise 1 script. And so you'll see this has opened up a file that has some text in it, and these are all different lines of code. And so what you're going to want to turn in for this assignment is we're going to work through this script together. I'm going to make some changes, and then from those changes I'm going to show you how to save this, and you'll submit this file to Canvas. All right, so up at the top of this script, you'll notice I have some text that looks like this. First of all, notice in the color scheme that I'm using that all of this code looks like it is gray. The reason for that is this is what are called comments. Notice how each of these lines starts as a hashtag. When we use this character in R sees this as, again, what is called a comment. And essentially, these are lines of code that are just for the person that is writing the code. These actually aren't going to run, they're not going to do anything, they're not going to produce anything. These are extra notes that we can place in our scripts to help us as the person coding. And I really cannot stress enough, you'll hear this throughout all of the lecture videos in this course, comments are incredibly important. They remind us what code does, and you should always be writing lots and lots of comments in your code. So I almost always start my scripts with something that looks like this. I like to have a little comment up at the top that just reminds me, okay, what was this script for? What was I using it for? And what was the last time I used it? So here you'll see this is for the Introduction to R Programming class. This is the Applied Extension Exercise R scripts. And I have my name here. So you'll want to delete out my name on your script and go ahead and type in your name. And I'm making this video on 8/17/2022, so I'm going to go ahead and put in that date. So you'll want to put in whatever date you're working on this. And so this is one of those things that typically in practice, when I'm writing R scripts to analyze data, each time I go in and modify a script or I modify a file, I will go ahead and update that date. And so that just kind of reminds me, hey, this is the last time I was in here and I worked on it. So let's just start with some basics of R code. So the first thing are inputs and outputs. And we already saw this with that example where I assigned the word example to be equal to the number 4. Here I'm going to assign x to be equal to the number 5. Now earlier I used this left arrow. You can also just use an equal sign. Either of those will work. So notice I've got my cursor on that line of code. I'm going to click the run button. That line of code will populate into the console, and I can also see up here in my environment that x is equal to 5. I could run the second line of code, and let's just see what happens if I were to change that 5 to be a 7. So again, the line of code runs down here in the console, and notice that x is now 7. So we do have to be careful because again, we're assigning x to be equal to a number, so that is definitely something that we can overwrite. And now notice if I just run a line of code with the letter X on it, what's going to happen is down here in the console, it's going to tell me that X is equal to 7. And you might say, well, wait a minute, you've got more than just the letter X on this line, but remember that anything that follows after a hashtag, that is going to be a comment, and so that's just for me, it'll print it out in the console, but really it's just ignoring it, it's not doing anything. Alright, so here we're going to define a variable age and we're going to set it equal to your current age. Well, as of writing this, I'm actually 37, so I'm going to change that. So I have age is equal to 37. So I'm going to run that line of code, and notice this time I highlighted the line of code. So you can highlight it or have the cursor there, either one is fine. Notice that age is now equal to 37, so you'll want to change that to be whatever your age is. And I can call age. Again, by running that, and I can see down here in the console, age is 37. Now what happens if I were to try to call age with a capital A? It's going to tell me the object age is not found. And this is a very important lesson here, and it's so important I'm going to add a comment, and I suggest you add a comment in your code as well. R is case sensitive. You are going to get lots and lots of errors as you learn to code. Don't worry about that. It is a very normal process of learning about coding. And one of the most common errors that you are going to make, and I still make this error to this day, is that R is case sensitive. So almost always if R tells me it cannot find an object, I always go back and double check my capitalization. Now here we've specified objects to be single numbers. We can also specify them to be vectors. So for example, I could set y to be equal to the vector 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I run this, notice y is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we're using here is actually your very first function. So the function name here is just the letter C. And so you'll notice that I have C followed by 2 parentheses. This is what functions in R look like. So you'll have the name of a function followed by 2 parentheses and then everything inside of the parentheses, that's what R is going to use to put into the function. So in this case, that C function, what it's going to do is it's going to combine the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into a vector. Just like we displayed those objects up above, which were equal to a single value, we could also display vectors by just calling the letter Y. Notice we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 down here. We could also, maybe we just want to display the second element of Y. So notice here, I've got Y brackets 2, and notice if I run this, it's going to display the number 2. The reason it's displaying the number 2 here is not because there's a 2 here, but because there's a 2 in the second spot of that vector. So to illustrate that a little bit better, let's look at another example. Here what we've got is a new object called classes, and I'm going to set that equal to a vector that takes the value 0, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0, 0. This is going to be a vector of length 7 because there's 7 numbers in it. And we're going to set it equal to the number of hours you attend each class, or attend classes rather, on each day of the week. And so we'll say that this one is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so for me this semester, I'm in classes 2.5 hours on Mondays, 0 on Tuesdays, 2.5 hours on Wednesday, and 0 the rest of the days of the week. So let's say, first I need to run this. So notice classes is up here. And let's say I wanted to know how many hours I attend class on the 5th day. So I would call classes 5. And I would see it is 0 hours for the 5th day. So I would like you to now edit this vector. And I'd like you to edit that vector to represent the number of hours you attend class each day of the week. And then I would like you to find out how many hours you spend on the 3rd day of the week. And so write those lines of code. All right, some other lines of code that we could write. We could specify a sequence. And so here's a couple different ways we could do this. I could set Z equal to the sequence from 1 to 5. I can do this using a colon from 1 to 5. And notice that Z is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So notice that Y and Z are actually equal to one another. And so you'll find this a lot in R. There's almost always going to be more than one way to program something. Now some ways are going to be more efficient. Some ways are going to be a little bit faster, they might have a little bit of shorter code, but there's almost always going to be more than one way to do something. And so we always want to be flexible as we learn to code and as we learn new things. Remember, there's probably other ways to do the same thing. Here's another sequence. We could write a sequence from 10 to 4. So notice that YY goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Another way we could define a sequence is using the SEQ function. So remember, this is a function because we've got some letters, which is the name of the function. We've got that open and closed parentheses. And then everything in the middle of those parentheses, that is what we're telling the function to do. So we're telling it to create a sequence from 3 to 4, but an increment of 0.1. And so we can run that. We see that we do get that sequence. And if we wanted to call it down the console, we could just run ZZ. Here's another example. We could have a sequence of odd numbers. So we get our sequence of odd numbers. So here, using that sequence function, we're going to go from 1 to 100 by increments of 2. If we wanted to get help with our different functions, notice our function name here is SEQ. So we could call help and put SEQ inside of it. So this is using the help function. And you'll notice that when we run this, the help window down here in the bottom right opens up. We could also put a question mark in front of the name of the function. That will do the same thing. We could use help.search. So this is useful when there's something that you want to know how to do, but you're not sure what the function name is. So in this case, I want to figure out how to create a sequence. So to do that, I could use help.search and put the word sequence in quotations. what this will do is it will bring up a whole list of functions that may or may not be what I'm looking for. And then we could also do that using the double question marks and sequence. It will pull up the same thing. I will, in full transparency, R offers these functions for help, but I almost always use Google. And you'll find that you use Google a lot in this class, and that is perfectly fine. So if I were trying to figure out how to create a sequence in R, I would probably type something like, how do I create a sequence in R? And I'd put that in Google. There's all kinds of functions you're going to learn throughout this class. For example, we might want to find the max of that vector classes that we created earlier. And what this would do is this would tell me the maximum number of hours somebody is in class during a week. And we see for me it is 2.5. You can also use R as just a basic calculator. So maybe we just want to know what 2 plus 2 is, or 3 minus 1, or 4 times 8, or 3 divided by 4. And so notice that all of these pop down in here. So what I'd like you to add into this script is, you'll notice I've added a comment for multiplication. I'd like you to add in some comments for addition, subtraction, and division. You can also do calculations on a named object. So for example, if we set the letter A equal to 5, we could take A squared, or we could set W equal to some function of A, and all of these will work. We could also do things like find the square root of pi, or take pi squared. Notice here, we found the square root of pi by taking pi to the half power. To take pi squared, we would do pi squared. We can find absolute values, we can find cosines, and we can find logs. So there are lots and lots of things that we can do within R, and we're going to spend this semester exploring lots of these. So for this particular assignment, this was just to kind of dip your toes in the water and just learn a little bit about R and how to create an R script. So from here, as long as you followed along with the video, you've made those changes I've asked you to find in this script. The only thing you need left to do for this assignment is we're now going to save this script as your own. So right now the script is called AE_1_script.r. Notice that it is blue and it's got a little star next to that file name. Rstudio is really good about telling you, hey, you haven't saved your file. You've got changes in here and you might want to go ahead and save. So that's a visual reminder that you haven't saved your file. You've made changes to it. That's what that star does. So you can always hit the save button and that will save your file. But in this case, you've made some changes to this, and everybody's is going to be slightly different. So I actually want you to save as. So you're going to go up here and click on File. We're going to go to Save As, and I would like you to save this as the file name it is currently, except underscore and your last name. So I'm going to put underscore Ellis next to mine. And so notice that file name is now changed, and this will be the file that you are going to submit to Canvas. And again, you'll just want to make sure you have those changes from the video and you have successfully created your own R script. You've modified it. You've done a couple new things in R. And then, like I said, don't worry if you feel overwhelmed right now. We're going to do a lot of work in R this semester, and this was really just designed to give you that brief introduction and make sure you've got R on your computer. So I'm going to end every video with this. As always, if you have any questions, you ever feel confused about anything, please feel more than free to reach out to me. I am more than happy to help with anything that you need.